RITC Cybersecurity, empowering businesses with robust cybersecurity protection.
Welcome to Ciphered Reality from RITC Cybersecurity. We have a guest today, Stewart Riley of Johansson Group. Stewart supervises the ISO audit team. I'm Mike Rotondo. Mari and Nikki are off today, and today we are going to do a deep dive into ISO audits. Connect with us at ritcsecurity.com/contact, and if you like the podcast, please subscribe. Welcome, Stewart.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike, for having me on.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I have been in the compliance field for a little over a decade. I started out helping out a friend who was my mentor. Got me into the compliance aspect, helping vulnerability checking and all that fun stuff, low level, and then worked my way up to partnering with him through ISO audits. That was a fun experience. And then from there, we decided to continue on. And now we partnered up with Johansson Group and are running their ISO department. So got accredited, cool. And since then, managing it and also running audits.
Nice. Very nice. And tell us about Johansson Group if you want. What do we need to know about them?
They are a great organization to work with. I know that they started out in the SOC world, and then after a few years of it slowly progressing, they reached out to us and asked to partner up with them to start an ISO division for them. A lot of their clients wanting, to get the SOC as well as ISO certified. So we've been able to come on and help bridge that gap for them and their clients, and the company continues to grow. It's been a great experience and great people to work with.
Very cool. Very cool. So for one of the things that we get a lot of on the podcast is, can you explain in plain English what exactly you're talking about? So for the less than initiated, what's an ISO audit? What's 27001 or 42001 or what's the breakdown of ISO?
Yeah. So when you look at an ISO audit, it really, the international standard that people follow for cybersecurity. But if you really break it down, it's really looking at what information or systems that you want to protect, and then looking at what could go wrong. And then the ISO, the whole process of the ISO standard is, how do you comply with that? How do you mitigate that?
Is there a lot of documentation with an ISO audit? I know that we get complaints about the SOC 2 documentation, but I've looked at the ISO templates, and there seem to be a whole lot of those.
It does seem to be that way. Really, when you look at it, and you're developing your ISMS, there is, with every standard, requirements that you have to follow, which, documenting your processes, documenting your procedures that will help you, manage your management system. It really comes down to the organization. I mean, a small organization may get away with a smaller footprint as far as documentation. But when you look at it and you look at your system, it really, I've seen companies have 30, 40 documents, 40 pages worth of documents, and I've seen a company that has almost 400. So it really kind of depends on who's doing the work and how much work they like to put on their plate.
Wow.
I think it depends on how deep you go into it and how specific you are.
So as an auditor, are you looking for content, or are you looking for formatting, or is there like a specific template that ISO requires, or is it just, put what we need down to cover your systems, and even if it's a crayon, we're good?
Well, I don't understand. Realistically, there isn't a specific way it needs to be done. The standard just says that you need some kind of a documentation like this. For instance, take a risk assessment. It just says you need to perform a risk assessment and talks about, like, how do you plan to evaluate it? And then it leaves it up to you and your ball court of your experience and how you want to do it. So really, there are probably, I'd say, about 10-ish documents that are required. And then depending on the client or the company and how much depth they want to go into all of their processes.
So a certain amount is subjective to the client, not to ISO is not saying, hey, I need a 9-page document to explain passwords.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Cool. So, with limited time and resources, where should organizations focus first to get their biggest return on their security efforts?
When you're starting out, depending on the size of the organization, most time it's going to be probably a small organization. I'd say the best place to start is either getting a hold of the standard, right? If you can do that. Some people rely on platforms to give that to them. But if you're tight with money and all that, getting a hold of the standard and just kind of reading through it. Once you understand what it's asking for, I think the biggest step would be figuring out the risk assessment, right? Okay. Determining, I guess there's two parts. Figuring out what, like I said in the beginning, what you want to, what you're trying to protect. So, that typically is looking at your scope statement. So understanding what you want to cover, what systems, what facilities, documentation, software, whatever it is that you're doing, figuring out what it is. And then once you've determined that, if you jump into your risk assessment, trying to determine, what are the vulnerabilities with it? What risks do you have and the severity? Once you establish those, everything else kind of falls into place. Because once you've established that, you're able to look at the annexes, which is kind of the second part to an ISO standard. I'd say there's two main parts. There's your system, which fits all of your controls. And then the annexes are the clauses, and then the controls are what helps you manage those risks that you've identified. So by starting with your risks, I think is probably the best, bang for your buck. Once you figure that out, everything else kind of falls into place as you go.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So you kind of touched on that, because the next question is basically for organizations that can't do everything at once, how do you recommend to prioritize the cybersecurity efforts, which you just said is, focus on your risk first, do that risk assessment, focus on getting that resolved and documented. And then how should they determine which initiatives they can manage internally versus when it's time to bring in outside expertise?
That's a great question, because we've done a lot of audits where it may be a 1, 2, or 5-man team, and so they'll either dedicate one person to it, or if you are a 1 or 2-man team, do you have the time to put into it? And so when it's kind of a subject to what you can handle and the expertise you have. So I guess the best question I would ask is, if you were to have an external auditor audit you, do you feel confident with what you've produced? And if you can't answer that, like, yeah, I've got this in the bag, then it may be time to look at, to get help to be able to provide you with the expertise that you're lacking.
Gotcha. Now, have you gotten into ISO 42001 yet?
So, as far as our organization or me specifically?
Organization and you specifically, or if it's not something you're working on with it yet, then...
Yeah, so we're actually, right now, we are going through the process of getting accredited for it. So we're doing all the legwork and that we need to be able to get accredited for it. So we're still in that process. Once we get the okay, we'll be able to start running those. And as far as myself, I've been certified as a lead auditor for 42001, and there's, I think, 4 or 5 others that are also certified for it. So we're ready and ramped to go once we get the thumbs up.
Cool. And just to give a quick overview in plain English, you and I know what it is, but what is the 42001?
So it's just like the 27001, which deals with security, but this time you're talking about AI. So that's why it's called AIMS, your Artificial Intelligent Management System. So the breakdown is kind of the exact same principle if you think about it, that what is it that you're trying to protect with AI, and how are you doing it, and what are the risks that come about because of it.
Okay. So would it be safe to say that, I mean, if you already certified as ISO 27001, you really would just need to focus on the 42001 parts to be 42001 certified, or is it complete? You have to do that work all over again?
As far as when it comes to the standard, it's a lot more policy heavy for the 42001 itself. So there's a lot of crossover that you can see as far as because of a management system. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be kind of the same. But as far as getting certified, it's really more focused on artificial intelligence and how that plays a factor in things. So it wasn't like a sidestep. It was, I had to go completely for the whole certification and walk through all of the steps of it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it wasn't just, take this extra 30 questions.
Correct.
Class.
Yeah. No, okay. It was a whole certification.
Okay. And what does it take to get certified to be an auditor?
Well, as far as to be an auditor, there's a couple different criteria. You got to be certified, right? You got to get the certification that you've gone through the process and understand it. From there, it's being able to demonstrate that you have the knowledge to be able to perform an audit. So whether that's experience, being on both sides of the table, or if that's being able to work with a company and start from the ground up, there's many different roads to get there. But the biggest one is having the knowledge base to be able to support your ability to, go in and look at evidence and see that they're actually complying with it.
And are you familiar with NIST or CIS or any of the other frameworks? Is there a lot of overlap between them? So
as far as frameworks, the answer is yes. There's going to be overlap. Mm-hmm. Now, the extent of the overlap really kind of depends on the organization. I know that I'm not too familiar with each one of them, but since our Johansson works a lot with SOC audits, there's a lot of crossover between SOC audits and ISO. Sometimes it's more just the rephrasing of how or what they're looking for. But if a company took the time to set up an access control, the processes that are in place there are going to satisfy your ISO 27001, but it also has the ability to satisfy those requirements for your SOC 2. And it's being able to sit down and recognize what those are so you're not doubling your work or tripling your work.
Gotcha.
Right. So sometimes it's looking at maybe taking a step back from what the verbiage is and trying to understand what it is it's asking for or what it is trying to get at.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right. And who should typically get an ISO audit? I mean, ISO certification. Is it, is mom and pop shop that really just needs a basic security framework, or is it someone that's, fairly sizable or needs, more compliance requirements?
Yeah. I mean, to answer that question, really, I think everybody should have some kind of an element to their company, whether it's a mom and pop or if it's a multi-million-dollar company. There's still risks and vulnerabilities to every one of those. Right? A mom and pop shop, if they have any online presence, if they even their physical location has potential threats. So I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I do think everyone has the ability to take the concepts from the ISO 27001 standard and apply it. But when it comes to our day and age, it seems like the ISO 27001 audit really plays a factor for companies to get contracts as well as governmental contracts. If they're working with businesses or vendors, they want to see that you're protecting your assets so that when you're using their stuff, that you're going to protect them as well. So I think it's kind of become a national standard, or not even a national, I'd say, a worldwide standard in the element that people want to see it. And I think when you have it, it opens the door to stop that back and forth. Well, okay, do you do this? Well, do you do this? It's like, hey, we have the standard. What's required of it. We've been certified. Here you go. And I think that helps companies be able to bypass that, but it also shows that they're trying.
Right.
So.
Have you ever had anybody fail an ISO audit?
That is one misconception that we run into all the time. Really? I think a lot of people think, hey, an audit means it's a pass or fail. And when it comes down to it, we've had clients who have findings, and I think that's almost that shouldn't be a fear, but more of an understanding that when there is a finding, it's that we've helped identify something that may be missing or that you have overlooked or that has fallen through the gaps to help you continuously stay certified, or that you're doing what's right to protect yourself. Now, there has been once or twice where we've had to stop an audit, but that's because the client wasn't prepared, right? They hadn't done all the necessary steps to show they even had a management system in place. Okay. So as far as failing, I'd say that's probably the closest we would get to a failure. But the truth is that we just stopped it and said, okay, go, finish it, go fix it what you need to, and come back and we'll certify that you're doing what you say you're doing. So, to answer your question, there's really not a pass fail. It's more of a, hey, we're just trying to help validate what you've done.
So as part of the audit process, do you go and do like a readiness assessment like they'll do in SOC 2, or do you just go ahead and say, all right, customer A, are you ready? Okay, here we are.
Yeah, well, there's kind of two parts to that. We don't really do a readiness per se. That's where a company's internal audit would be kind of that for them, being able to perform an internal audit saying, hey, we've gone through our system and we're ready. But when you look at the whole standard from start to finish, there's two stages when you're initially going for your certification. So stage one is basically you establishing your management system. So that's you having your policies, procedures, and really we're looking through all of the clauses 4 through 10, saying, hey, have you established a management system? And during that, there isn't minor nonconformities or findings. There's areas of concern. So if a client, goes for it, maybe they had performed an internal audit but forgot to present it to the management group and have a management meeting. So, we would flag that and say, hey, here's an area of concern. If you don't, fit those pieces, it's going to show up in your stage 2 audit. So, I guess in a sense, the stage 1 could be kind of that gap assessment to begin with, but really it's just us seeing, trying to say, hey, we see that you have a management system in place. Here's some things that you may need to consider as you now put into effect all your controls and get ready for your stage 2.
Gotcha. So what, everything seems to start at 4. So what's 1, 2, and 3? Is that just defining your ISMS, or what is that?
I think that's the beginning of the standard, kind of outlining what it's for, what's the intent of it all. So the reason why it starts at 4 is because that's where it matters to clients the most, right? So that's what you're going to be audited on. So the other 3 are just kind of the build up to that.
Okay, so it's the how-tos.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And we ask these questions because a lot of our audience, they're pretty, their audits are like a big, scary thing to a lot of the people that we deal with. And then they have these things built in their mind because I think everybody initially or automatically flips to IRS audit and they're like, I don't want to go to jail because I failed my ISO audit.
Right. No, you're right. It is really scary. We get clients all the time that come in and like, okay, so what's the expectation? We want to know everything because we're so concerned, we're so worried. But when it comes down to it, really, we're just coming in to validate what they've decided is in scope and how they've developed their management system and is it working for them. So yeah, no, it's true. It is. It's one of those things where at the end, a lot of our clients come out and say, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And we always look for a win-win.
I've found that when I've taken people through SOC 2. What's interesting, I've always found, we finish SOC 2 audits for our clients, and they're like, "That's it." Like, yeah, that was it.
Right.
So that's why we like working with Joe.
No, it's true.
Straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we try to be. To talk a little bit more about the process of all, a lot of clients initially either start because they've gone to a platform and they're using the tools there, and then they're finally reaching out to us, or we get those who are coming straight in and saying, okay, what's the time frame? How long is this going to take us to get certified? And one of the misconceptions there that we run into is they think we tell them what's happening. And the truth about it is you're telling us, right? So when you're ready, so we've had people sign with us and it takes them a year before they're actually ready to actually test their ISMS system. It's really, it's down to more the client and what they're doing. Sometimes we get people who are like, hey, I need this tomorrow. And it's not that easy to do. You've still got to get through that process. Right. Have you actually even developed a system? Okay, well, our tool is telling us that we're completely compliant. And then we get in there and there's no evidence. And so that makes it really rough on them. And they're like, I thought it was supposed to be easier than it was. But I think there's some misconceptions where, like I said, the best bang for your buck is to understand what it's asking for. And once you understand it, if you can explain it to an auditor, hey, this is how we're doing it, then you know your system, and it gives the auditor a little bit more, oh, okay, this will be probably a little bit smoother sailing because I can ask a question and you know where to go find the answer. Or you can tell it without like, oh, I got to go talk to Steve in, this other department before I can get back to you on that, which is still okay. But
so, yeah. So it's kind of like SOC 2, where you kind of define your own risk and then you show how you're addressing it. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that's a very fair statement. I think a lot of people misconcept that the standard says this, like, oh, we must do this. And I think, like you said, it really is up to the client to say, well, we understand what it's asking for, but this is how we as an organization have determined we're going to do that. So a lot of times, for instance, internal audits, the standard requires you to do those, right? But they don't understand is that a client who may be a small organization may not need to do an internal audit every year, right? They're not making changes. They don't plan to grow right away. They may be able to put in their documentation that we'll perform an internal audit every 2 years. We're going to look at that and go, oh, so this is how you've defined how you're going to do it. And now we're going to, leverage it. So like you said, I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, also, where people think, oh, we have to do it exactly like the standard, but really it's how you define it.
Okay. Yeah. So if you would compare that to PCI, where it's like, you will do this, you will do this, you will do this, right. Much different thing.
Right.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, I think that also branches into the controls too. I think there's a misconception because there's 30 clauses that you have to fulfill. Mm-hmm. And then there's 93 controls. And right. They're broken up into 4 departments. And I think a lot of people think, oh, we either need to do all of these and not really sit back and see how that pertains to their organization. And so, sometimes we'll get people who will look at physical controls 7 and completely say, okay, we're going to exclude all of these, but not realize that, oh, you have employees with computers. You might need to have the clear desk, clear screen control in effect, but they're like, oh, it's physical controls. We're just going to exclude them all. So it's taking the time to really see what you need.
Gotcha. You ever come across somebody writing an SDLC policy that doesn't do any development, and they're like freaking out by it? Well, why do I have to have this?
Oh yeah, no, there is that. I actually audited a company where they don't do any development at all. So what they get coming in from the client, they're actually supposed to push it out to everything. So there is no storage of client, personal information. There's no worry about that. So they actually were going through 8, and there's a lot of with Annex 8 dealing with development that they just excluded right away. And it's probably the most I've ever seen in an audit. But when you understand what they're doing and how they're doing it, it makes sense. But I know they had to reach out for help on that because they, couldn't have figured that out for themselves. That's when that expertise came into play.
Gotcha. I think we touched on this earlier, but what are the competitive advantages to companies getting an ISO certification?
Well, one, I think it shows that they care about their system or their information. So it will show that they take that into consideration. I think it also plays a big factor on that if we're protecting our stuff, we're going to protect your stuff as well. I think it has that competitive advantage showing that you care. The others, I think for companies to be able to, if someone comes in and says, hey, how are you doing this? How are you doing access control? And you can just say, hey, here's our ISO audit certification. Here you go. We take care of it. We don't need to go into the nitty gritty. It could save time and energy and costs for customers too, to present that to vendors. Because a lot of vendors will, hey, what are you doing for this and this? It's like, no, we've already gone through this process. Here's our certificate. So I think it has the advantage of helping, show that they care, that they're doing what is right, as well as, hey, we don't need to go into the weeds to get things done.
Yeah. So, I know that when we get a lot of customer questionnaires for our clients, it's really simple to say, yeah, we're SOC 2, or we're, we've got a NIST certification. We've got our third-party assessment. We've got our pen test. These are our third-party assessments. It knocks out a whole lot of questions, especially when you're dealing with bigger companies. Yeah.
No, I know that one of the companies that we worked with in the beginning, they did a lot with banks. And so they were getting constantly questionnaires all the time. And a lot of it was like, look, we're certified here. We're certified here. We don't need to do this. We're doing what we need to.
Yeah.
As far as trying to help people get ready for their audits and, trying to help with those misconceptions, I think the biggest thing is one of the questions we get is, are the auditors, certified? And one of the biggest things that we have to go through is finding someone who is certified, but then has gone through rigorous training and can show, background in either compliance or development, be able to show that they can actually audit against it. But a lot of times, with the day and age that we're in right now, especially after COVID, there is questions about, do we need to come on site? And that's really depends on, what kind of physical security you have in place. But with the day and age of cloud providers and all that, not a lot of people are housing their own data centers. So when it comes to physical controls, a lot of that can just be handled, over a video call. Walk us through your place, show us what you have in place. So I think sometimes there's that misconception of it's daunting. I know that when I started out, it was before COVID.
Are on-site visits required?
So they are if the organization has established it, if they have a data center, if they have those things in place, a physical location that they are heavily protecting to make sure that sensitive stuff isn't going out. There is that option that may have to be required, but that's part of the evaluation of looking at what's going to be entailed in the audit. I would say we haven't had to do an on-site in a while, just because, like I said, a lot of people don't even have their own data centers. They're just relying on AWS and GCP. So that hasn't gone away as far as in this. Once COVID hit, that regulation of, hey, we can do video chats and all that. I think that's been kind of a standard for a while. So we really haven't done any on-sites in a while. We've done a couple, but they're very far and in between. It could be that an organization did have, a data center that needed to be looked at and walked through. But for the most part, I'd say that's not even a big concern nowadays with the size of companies and what's going on. I mean, if they have multiple locations and sites that they're doing, that could potentially, but it's kind of a little bit more rare nowadays.
I think it's interesting, and you mentioned the physical controls included, people working remotely and their desktop computers, because I think ISO is the only one that ever, I think NIST kind of pays lip service to it. I don't think SOC 2 really cares, other than you have like an acceptable use policy. So does ISO require you to have a clear desk? Are those kind of concerns stipulated in the standard?
It is one of the controls in the standard. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 7.7, but I could be off by a few.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to fact check you.
If they do, it's okay. But, the biggest thing when you look at it, like I said, with even risks, ISO 27001 does play a factor in that, when you're talking about securing your assets. If a laptop is an asset because it's, the employee's using it to get into their instances that they use to house their code or their production, there are a few controls that do manage that and look at, how have you mapped it? How are you guys protecting your assets? What do you have? How are you controlling it? Even when it comes down to an employee who leaves or is terminated, how do you get the asset back? Do you wipe it? What protections do you have on it? Do you destroy it? There's a lot of different little elements throughout the standard that does play that factor with remote teams. And some people may just determine there's no risk because they've, made sure that they can't store anything on the devices. They can't plug in USB drives. So, some people may determine that's not even something that they really even care about, or it's so low on their risk of what could affect their company that some people choose not to, do anything with it. So it really kind of comes down to the company, but the standard does have things in place for it.
So would that be a finding, or you would just if they're accepting that risk, you accepted that risk?
So that's a great question.
I'm sorry.
Because that's something that we talk about all the time. Because as an auditor, you may look at something and go, best practice would be to have that a clear desk, clear screen policy in place. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to it, it really is up to the organization. So if they state that they do have a clear desk, clear screen, and have chosen to do nothing with it, that would be a finding, right? Because they have determined that it is going to be something that they have leveraged with the risk assessment. If they choose to completely exclude it, there may be a conversation. Auditor may say, hey, this may be a good idea. Granted, they can't consult, they can't tell you what to do, but they could say, hey, you may want to rethink about that. And the company could come back and say, we've determined it's not necessary, and that's why we excluded it. So, okay, well, that's why you've determined it. There's a conversation that will be had, but, the auditor can't consult. So we're just more, okay, have you thought about this? Why have you decided to exclude it? Do you have enough justification for excluding it? If so, then there is no finding. But really, findings usually are about more what you've included, not so much as what you've excluded, unless you've done a poor job of explaining why you excluded it.
Gotcha. So if I'm a company and I come back, my report comes back and it's got 7 or 8 findings on it. Do you allow a remediation period and then you come back and check them, or is it like, we'll see you next year, get those fixed?
So it brings up 2 good points. One, before we ever close an ISO audit, the client will know what the findings are. So there's no surprise there, right? So if you end up having 7 findings, you would know why you had 7 findings before that audit closes. The severity of the findings would determine on what the next steps are. So if you had a minor nonconformity, at the end of the audit, a corrective action document will be sent to the client where they will then answer what did they immediately do to try to help resolve or stop that from happening. A root cause analysis to help identify what were the problems, and then how they plan to long-term mitigate or fix the problem. So then they'll submit that to us, where we'll look at it, and if everything looks good, we'll approve their plan, And then next year we'll come back and look at, did you actually implement what you said you were going to?
Sure.
If it's a major nonconformity, a systemic failure, something that's really, hey, you can't really run your ISMS unless this is fixed. That would have to be resolved first. So they would have to put the plan into place, show us all the evidence that they've actually done what needs to be done before we can move to certification.
Gotcha.
So I hope that kind of answers that.
Yeah, so you can be certified with findings. You just have to have a remediation plan in place. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, I would actually say that most often, if not, you're going to have findings. And I think that's where that that misconception of, hey, pass or fail, there's a good chance that somewhere along the lines you may have dropped something. For instance, recently, I did an audit where for 2 years they were compliant, and then on this third year they had terminated an employee, but forgot to go through their offboarding process. So they only have 10 employees, so they did one, and I think it's just like, oh, everybody was taking care of it, but they didn't document it, so they didn't follow their policy. So, that would be a finding because, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do with this specific person. You've done it with everybody else, but this one you forgot. So that would show that there's some kind of a problem. Right. So findings are totally natural.
Okay, got it. So don't be afraid of findings, people. Exactly. On that audit period, it's now my understanding is it's a major audit every 3 years, and then it's just checking evidence in year 2 and year 3, or it's every 4 years.
Yes,
a major audit is
correct. So a recertification happens every third year. So, but technically it'd be the fourth year, right? So you go through your certification, and then you have 2 years of surveillance. And during those surveillance, the standard requires that you do at least 1/3 of all the controls during a surveillance audit. Since now that they've updated the standard and they've broke it down into 4 areas, we typically do half. So we'll do 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8 of the annexes during those surveillances. So in a sense, you've had 2 full checks of your system by your next recertification.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, what's the bigger challenge, the technical controls or the documentation and process for the client?
Oh, I would say probably the documentation of evidence, right? I think a lot of times people are doing it. I think sometimes they forget to document what they're doing. That's why when we do an ISO an audit, we're not just looking at what you have in policies. We're not just looking at what physical evidence you have. We'll take also, verbally, if you can explain what you're doing, that also is an element of the audit that we can take into consideration. But I'd say having it documented saves you the hassle of trying to figure out where that piece is, or trying to explain it all and making sure that someone can understand it. So as far as technical, I think people do a really good job of it all, but I think the lack is usually the documentation.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we find all the time is we have clients that are technically just rock solid, but they're like, well, we wrote this on the back of a cocktail napkin, and we've got this here, and somewhere on a billboard we just tell everybody these are your password policy, and that kind of thing. So. Because honestly, I've been IT a long time. No one wants to do documentation.
Right. No, and I understand. I think that's one of the things that really can bog someone down getting ready to either do their certification, do a surveillance, or their recertification is, it's once we got the certificate, your ISMS is a living, breathing system. And so if you're not constantly staying up with it, if you wait till the last month before your audit's about to kick off to go gather all the evidence and oh crap, did we actually get these things done? You've given yourself no window to really check and make sure it's happening. So I think that's when errors really do happen the most, is because I think they're like, oh, we got the certificate. Okay, we can forget about it for now. And then, 3 months before the audit, you're like, oh crap, we were supposed to do all these things that we need to be doing. So.
Yeah, what we found is the best thing to do is to operationalize your audit process and just do it year round and make it part of KTLO. And just that way it's not a fire drill, because I've worked for some very large companies that, it's like, all right, we scheduled the audit for, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and we're going to start working on it the week before Thanksgiving. And you're like, thanks, boss.
Don't. Right.
Yeah.
No sleep, no sleep for those that whole week, right? And then hoping that you're still getting everything in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you have to rely on other teams to give you that information.
Oh, 100%. Being a security person, you don't own anything, right? You don't have access to most things. You just, observe, recommend, and report. And it's like, I need that. Well, hey, we're busy. Or, I've got half my team's out on vacation because it's Thanksgiving. Why are you scheduling your audit around Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's so true. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, there's times, we've been in audits, are like, hey, I'm still waiting for, this to come from legal. It's like, well, our audit window is, only a few days. So if it's not here, that's going to be a finding, because we can't validate that you've done it or that you're doing what you're saying. I think that really puts even more stress on it.
So you actually set a specific audit window. So they've got to provide it all within a specific period?
Correct. So typically when we go into an audit, we're auditing them from the previous audit, right? So if we do your audit in April, next April when we come back around, we're going to see what have you been doing since last April. But the audit window itself, depending on the organization, the size of employees, the complexity of your system, there's a whole algorithm that we have to take into place to determine how many audit days it's going to take to go through a sampling base of your evidence. So typically that ranges for a recertification or even a initial certification 5 days. Could be up to I've seen one that went 21 days. So depending on the organization, because they had 7 sites, 5,000 employees, so you got to have a good sample size of each site and everything that's going on there.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Interesting. So you actually set the period. That's interesting, because that differentiates from a lot of. I've seen SOC 2 audits be pushed and pushed and pushed, and they last. The observation period may be a year, but while they're out gathering evidence, it could take weeks, if not more.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the big differences between the two. And we get clients who are like, hey, I want to run both at the same time. Oh. It's like, you're like, you can. We wouldn't recommend it, but you can do it, because they're two different audits. Typically, if most people nowadays have tools, right? The Dradas, the Secure Frames, the Vantas of the world.
Vantas. Yeah.
So, they'll say, okay, we have it located. We're good to go. But they don't know where everything is. So, hey, for 4 days, we're going to be looking at your system. If in that 4 days you can't provide the evidence for the last year of what you've said you're going to do, like completing your internal audit, your management review meetings, have you done a policy change? Have you updated your risk assessment or evaluated your risks? Are you good there? Your asset, if you do quarterly asset reviews or inventory of assets or access reviews. Like, are you doing those things and have the evidence to provide? If you give us we give you 3 days to, provide all that information in, and you wait till a week before, it's going to be chaos if things sort of have not happened. But yeah, so it is different between that. I think, SOC audits usually last a little bit longer as far as audit windows than what it does for the ISO audits.
Interesting. That is a big differentiator. I've been to those fire drills and they're not fun.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Specifically PCI, and it's like, where's our evidence for the last 12 months that we've actually been remediating all our vulnerabilities? It's like, wait, what? Not
oh
right
man.
Now.
Seriously, like, oh man.
Yeah. Now, I've had PCI audits where I have had to, as the liaison with the auditor, had to sit there and actually physically show them on a system, like, all right, here's where my single sign-on comes on. This is where my multi-factor is, and they're actually looking over your shoulder. Are you guys good with screenshots, or do you actually want to see the live evidence?
It depends on the auditor. Sometimes I guess I'd say it depends on the auditor as well as the client and how much readiness they are, right? If you can provide a bunch of screenshots showing us timestamps, showing us those things, we may even during the audit say, that's great. I see this was done 8 months ago. Can we go look at it live now and just see how it's running? So an ISO audit, I think it's a good range of it all, right? You could get some things where, hey, can you show me how you do this so that I can see that you know what you're talking about, versus, hey, okay, I'll take the screenshots from this. We're good here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think that's what's interesting is the biggest, thing that we do is it's a sample-based approach. So, they're still subject to some degree of uncertainty throughout the audit that's there, but we're really just trying to get a good enough sample that we can validate that you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes that's good screenshots. Sometimes it may be, hey, walk us through this because, you might not even have a management tool. I've had a couple of those where they use an Excel sheet and, we're going through each one. Okay, show me how you do this then. Okay, walk me through this process. Those are long phone calls.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they are.
AI-enabled threats don't follow yesterday's rules, and your defenses shouldn't either. RITC, Cybersecurity's penetration testing, finds your gaps before attackers do. Visit ritccybersecurity.com/contact.
A lot of our podcast goal is to educate as well. So.
And I think that's one of the big things that needs to be done, right? I think what you guys are doing is a great thing to help people understand or have a little bit of understanding where to go grab more information, or, oh, hey, I never thought about this. I should probably dive into more depth here. So
yeah, we're hoping to enlighten, and that's why we do a lot of news too. We didn't do it on the, we don't typically do it with guests, but we spent a lot of time. Well, Mari and Nikki spent a lot of time going through the news stories to find relevant things that are going on. We just did one yesterday that had a ton of AI, scary stuff out there.
AI plays an interesting factor in all of this. So I know that they have the standard, but I think a lot of people think, oh, if I just use AI to create a policy, we're good. And I've heard people say, well, hey, are you using AI when it comes to auditing? And when you look at it, if you can grab a policy and have it help you go, hey, can you look for verbiage like this? It can help you get to where you need to fast, especially if you're combing through 300 pages of policies. Right. That it has its effect, but it can't go, review evidence. It can't go determine, are they complying here or there? So, I think some people have some misconceptions of how that plays a factor in what we're doing.
Yeah, you can't take humans out of the loop.
Yeah, you really can't.
Yeah. No.
There's so many things that we offer that AI cannot do.
Yeah, well, and the movie War Games taught us that back in the 80s. So.
That was a good movie. I actually subjected my kids to it a month ago. So
did you? They like it?
Yeah. I think it was over their heads a little bit. I think just like it was for me when I watched it the first time. But my older kids were like, "Oh, interesting." Especially with AI nowadays, I think it did it gave them some things to think about.
I always wait, that's a phone? What?
Wait, that's a computer? Yes. The computer just was lines across the screen?
Yeah. Why is he dialing it? Well, that's how you got out. That was how you made a phone call.
Right? Oh, man. It's crazy how far we've come and how fast. So
I remember going back in way back the Wayback Machine when I first started installing Brooktrout drives or Brooktrout boards, which were these big modems that were a bunch of 56K connections or 128K connections, and it was just like, wow, we're rocking now.
Oh, right. No, my mentor he would tell me all the time, like, I remember when we got like a megabyte of of wow, this is amazing how fast it's going, and to see where we're at terabytes and even further.
Well, and Bill Gates had this famous quote: "You'll never need bigger than a 40 megabyte hard drive." Yeah. So, how big is the latest version of Windows?
Right.
And then and I did some sales work for a while in computers, and I remember when 8 megabytes of memory was over $800. So I mean, it was just,
wow.
We're not even talking about gigabytes; we're talking megabytes.
Isn't that crazy?
And trying to source one gigabyte drives was almost a nightmare. Where can I find that? I want this specific compact model. I can't find them. If I can find them, they're going to be $2,000 each. I don't care. I need them. Oh, okay. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy what computers have done for us.
The world has changed for sure.
Right.
Speaking of, so is there an ISO tool you recommend over others, or are they the Vantas and the others still all about the same?
I would say that for the most part, they're all the same as far as what they provide to the client. Okay. Depending on your needs, I think some could be better than others. But I mean, in the grand scheme of it, a tool is as good as the user is of the tool, right? It's a great place to house your documents. Some of them offer some great amenities to help you, track, manage, stay consistent with your policies, policy reviews. But when it comes down to it, it really is the user behind it. You could have they could have the best tool in the world and could still mess up their ISMS if they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, I know that I believe even Rippling's coming out with one. So there's tools are everywhere. So I think if you're going to use one, just be aware that there's still user aspects of it that needs to be in place. You need to know where you're going to find things and what you're looking for and what you're doing. And the tool can be your best friend and help you get there much faster than if you do it by yourself. So.
Yeah. I remember when some of the first tools came out, and it was like Archer, and we tore that thing apart, and it's like, this is basically a calendar with reminders. We can do this for less than $250,000.
Right? No, like I said, I had done spreadsheets up until probably right before we got accredited. We were still working with companies, still doing spreadsheets, using Excel sheets to manage. We'd have a column of the standard. We'd have a column of how, our summary of how we're doing it. Where's the documentation or what documentation we need? And are we complying or not complying? I mean, it was, as bare bones as I think you can get almost.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do agree. I do like some of the tools because I do remember going through doing, like NIST assessments using a spreadsheet. And it's just like, it's just, and somehow turning that into, thank God I had good project managers, turning that into a report, but it was, it was a pain.
It's not easy. It's probably not the best route to go, but it's definitely a route you can use.
Well, there wasn't another route when I first started. So that was it.
Right. I mean, I would say tools really haven't been around that long. So, I mean, I think we all had to do it the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one of the first PCI audits. Here's your tab of the spreadsheet. Oh, great. Thanks.
Well, what I think that it's one thing I think gives us a little bit of assurance on the quality that we try to provide. When we started out, there was only 3 of us on the ISO side of Johansson Group. We're now up to 13 auditors. And so one of the biggest things that we look for is, do you understand? Like if you had to do it yourself, could you, do you have the competency to understand what it takes to put a management system in place? Not just to be able to audit against it, but to put one into place. Because it changes the way you look at things. I think sitting across the table, watching an auditor audit us changes how you view auditors. Yeah. So there's good ones, there's decent ones, and there's ones you hope to never have to deal with again. But
yeah. I did a stint for about a year as a SOC 2 auditor, and it really helped me understand SOC 2 prep much better. So I've seen it on both sides of the table from SOC. a startup that I had, we had an ill-advised partnership with an accounting firm we wound up doing all the work, and they took 51% of the profit. So it's not the way to do it. So because AICPA requires them to own 51% of the company. So
that's rough.
Yeah. So we just say it lasted about a year and we were done. So is there an example of a small issue that turned into a major finding? Something that, people would consider small and all of a sudden just blew up?
I would, as far as I have a couple different ones, so I'm trying to think which one would be kind of the best example, but I guess the biggest one would be a client was leveraging a tool. So they thought that they were doing everything they needed to using that tool. The tool said that they're 100%. So, we try to put some safeguards in place, not only to help us get ready for audits, but to help the clients make sure that they're ready. We want to make sure that, like I said, it's a win-win for both sides. That doesn't mean that no one's going to get findings. It just means that, hey, you're ready and our auditors are ready to be able to assess you. And so, we've done an audit where the client said they were fully ready, and then we get in and they are like, the auditor couldn't find anything. So they're going through, we can't find policies. We can't find evidence. We can't even find a list of assets or even, an ISMS document. And the client, they're like, hey, it's right there in the tool. Go to the tool. So, we're in the tool, we're screen sharing saying, here, this is what we're looking at. They're like, that's not what I see. And so, they bring in the platform and they're, the tool's like, hey, come to find out, they thought that the tool would upload all their evidence. They thought the tool would provide all the documentations. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how it got to the point where it said that they were complying with everything, but there was no evidence. There was no management system. So I would say that was probably one of the biggest, what could have seemed to be small turned into a major problem, was the fact that they thought the tool would do all the work for them. But I've seen somewhere, you start out with, hey, here's a missing piece of documentation, right? Whether it be employee security training. So the employees were supposed to be doing the security training. So you find out that one of them didn't do it, right? So you now start going down that process where it may have seemed like, okay, this could be an observation. Maybe it's not. I mean, you have everything in place. The employee was just negligent. So maybe it's an observation. But then as you get going down, you find out that no, this person's had all the information in front of them. They actually were the person managing the system. They've just chosen not to do any of it. And then you find out, oh, actually, all these other pieces dealing with employee trainings are not happening. But what what we started with looked good. But as you start going down, it started to, go from what could have been just an observation to a minor or major nonconformity, which then kind of blew up. And, clients they're not too happy when they see that happen, but, sometimes it's just the way it goes.
Do you find that many people getting an ISO audit are just trying to check a box, or are they actually serious about being compliant?
I think you get, the full gamut. You get those who are trying to, hey, I can get this government contract if I get, this certification. So I'm just trying to check every box I can to get it.
Right.
And, those are the ones that usually tend to have the most issues because they're not really trying to put in a system. But, you get the others who are really caring and trying to do it, and they'll still miss things here and there. But no, that's why I say usually my first phone call with a potential client or with helping one of our clients who have already signed up, like, hey, make sure you understand what's being required. Because if you can start there, everything else goes, will fall into place. Like if you're looking at the standard, and most tools will have the standard right there embedded in, you click on 4.1. Okay, it's going to walk you through what you need for, your external, internal issues to your ISMS. So it's going to walk you through it. So if you understand it or read the standard, you'll start to see what's required. I think that's the biggest one. I know everybody has those moments where checking a box is like, crap, I got to get this done. I got to get this done fast. And so they may sometimes skip something or rush through it. But I'd say for the most part, there's a happy medium right in the middle, I think. And you get those who are really good on one end and those who are just trying to rush it on the other and check a box.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else that you want to enlighten the audience with?
Yeah, just don't be scared. Again, when you're going through an ISO 27001 audit, our goal is not to be a gotcha moment. We're not trying to find problems. We're just trying to validate that what you're doing is what you're doing. And if there's anything that's not compliant to what you have, we're just there to help present it so that you can fix it and continue to protect yourself and your systems and information. So we're not too scary.
Yeah.
You might not like us at the end of it with findings, but we're not scary.
But yeah, there's a minimal loss of blood. So, So what's the best way to reach out to Johansson, to reach out to you guys?
Right now, if you reach out to our website, johanssongroup.llp.com, you can find all the information there with regards to all the types of audits that we do, as well as if you're looking for documentation information, that's one of the best places to go to get it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully this will help those that are looking at the ISO 27001 standard.
Definitely. Don't miss next week's episode of Ciphered Reality for our monthly wrap-up and news that might just change the way you see the digital world. Be sure to look for our videos on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Connect with us at ritcsecurity.com/contact. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe. And remember, what's that website again, Stewart?
It's johanssongroup.llp.com.
All right. And remember, cybercrime is bad. Love RITC Cybersecurity. Trust nothing. Verify everything. Everybody have a great day.